Okay. Okay, please know that we indeed welcome you to an evening of exploration of the power of theater to expose, inject, and change our human sensitivity, to touch our souls, to build our capacities to find or build peace, or at least bear witness to the challenges of doing so. My name is Dee Aker. I'm the director here of the Institute for Peace and Justice, and it's my tremendous privilege to introduce Katrine Filloux, Kroc School of Peace Studies' first scholar in art and peacebuilding. Katrine is not only an award-winning playwright, librettist, teacher, activist, she's a friend to the Institute, who's presented her works here and offered her workshops. She's been coming here for quite some time. Actually, she came before there was a School of Peace Studies to the Institute for Peace and Justice, and we're happy to be able to share her and excited that the school has actually recognized how important this dimension of peace building is. She's never stopped bringing her experience, her talents, her brilliant works, and I want to say that in exploring the world of peace building with her this evening, you will experience bits and pieces of her world that are so amazing and are so transformational. By the way, how many people have been here before to see any of her plays? Yes. Yes, good. Well, this is good. Actually, not only is she involved with the school, there's a possibility we may have a new minor in the College of Arts and Sciences in peace and art and peace building. If we do, I'm going to start school all over again. I'm going to go back. We're honored to have Katrine here as a playwright who undertakes in each of her works an intentional and huge task, the task of exposing our often hidden or forgotten capacities to understand and possibly respect others, no matter how different we are. She gives us and the world a doorway, and once we pass through, we may be able to understand what things a little better, and we also may be able to see how to change our own paths a little bit. I admit that I think of this space, and I've been here a long time, that we're in as the Katrine Filloux Peace and Justice Theater. For we have visited her many worlds here in plays and readings and discussions about those intriguing landscapes that she explores. She's brought great actors and received standing ovations. She shared her visions of how the convergence of art and peace building and justice are manifest in our creative and curious human natures. Over 10 years ago, we shared Lemkin's House, a profound exploration of soul and intent and ongoing needs of Lemkin, the man who invented the word genocide, Raphael Lemkin. He turns out in his afterlife to be disturbed. He learns through the visitations of Tutsis and others that the international law he campaigned for against genocide had not accomplished what he'd hoped. Before hosting our first IPJ conference on exploring the arts and peace building 6 years ago, Katrine had brought us Dog and Wolf, another way to truth, or at least better understand one another, as we witnessed the political intrigue and discoveries and encounters of a Bosnian political refugee and her American lawyer that changed and transformed them and us in the audience, not ways we could have planned. At other times, we've shared the heart of her work on Cambodia and the killing fields and the aftermath in photographs from S21. That's just one of 4 plays that's profound impact, which now includes Where Elephants Weep, an opera about Cambodia. The pain and reality and sort of mystic or ephemeral understanding of that tragic history is something I personally continue to experience now to enhance my own empathy and promise for this country, because that's one of the places the IPJ works. Last spring, many of you witnessed Selma 65 and shared the raw emotions of a tragedy too few knew about or remembered, or which they never really addressed. The killing of a white mother the night of the Selma March, trying to stand up for the essential in social justice in America. Last fall, it was our incursion south to Colombia, finding the personal impact of a long revolution that is painful and real and life-changing in Catherine's play, The Kidnap, about the possible psychological transitions of a woman presidential candidate who spent 6 years in FARC captivity. Katrine Filloux has written many articles, been interviewed by numerous media, has partnered with playwrights worldwide. She's received accolades, thanks, and tears of appreciation from so many who she's touched. Tonight's award-winning playwright is a co-founder of Theater Without Borders, a volunteer network engaged in intentional theater exchange. Her plays have been produced around the world, not just on the stage, as I tend to think or say, but everywhere and in various languages, as you will see. She's received numerous awards, the Mellon Foundation, the Doolittle Justice and Outreach Committee, O'Neill, Kennedy Center, Omni Center for Peace, and New Dramatists, and Voice Award for Artistic Work from Voices of Women. Katrine received her master's in fine arts and writing from the Tisch School of New York University, and is co-founder of Acting Together on the World Stage. Please join me in welcoming this amazing playwright. Katrine?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dee. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dee. I would also like to thank the Dean Marquez. It's very, very emotional for me to be here tonight. I feel that this has come to be a home for me, and it's wonderful to be here. I will tell you very briefly what the talk is going to be about. We will start with acknowledgments to this land and the original peoples that were here. I will then speak about my work in theater and peace building and those of colleagues, showing some video clips. Then I will talk about issues and challenges in art and peace building, as well as outcomes. And then we will have a Q&A. USD sits on Kumeyaay land. There are currently 12 Kumeyaay bands, mainly in East and Northeast San Diego County. San Diego is home to 19 American Indian reservations, which is the highest concentration in the US. Capitan Grande Reservation is uninhabited due to a loss of water rights to create a reservoir. The remaining 18 tribal nations represent 4 distinct cultural groups with their own language and culture: Kumeyaay, Luiseno, Cupeño, and Cahuilla. I'd like to thank Percy Lewis, who is here at USD, for helping me to acknowledge the original peoples. Percy is the tribal liaison and professor of practice here in the Department of Sociology. The underlying assumption of human rights work is that every single person deserves to live life with dignity. I was born in 1960 here in San Diego, the child of immigrants, and I was very familiar with the border between the United States and Mexico. In the US, we are currently in a battle between those who believe we should not let the so-called undesirables into our country and those who believe in the underlying assumption of human rights. In Cambodia, in 2001, I produced my short play, Photographs from S21 in the Cambodian language, with professional actors under the guidance of a filmmaker from Cambodia, Riti Pan. I saw how a play can provide a safe space for people to discuss difficult political and human rights issues that they would not bring up otherwise. I saw the power of theater in a new light. In the years after 9/11, I traveled regularly to Cambodia and went to other countries for my playwriting work. I co-founded Theater Without Borders, which is a grassroots volunteer organization. It's a network of international artists, theaters, and organizations that share a common interest in international exchange. One of our initiatives has been to collaborate with Dr. Cynthia E. Cohen at Brandeis University to create the new program of Peacebuilding and the Arts. It focuses on the distinctive contributions of culture and the arts to the transformation of conflict. We produced Acting Together, 2 volumes of an anthology and a documentary film. My life's work has been to hone my playwriting craft in the service of human rights in order to make theater part of the public discourse. I have searched for languages of survival and regeneration in response to war, genocide, and abuse. In the book Just Mercy, Bryan Stevenson, the human rights lawyer working to reverse the injustice of death penalty cases, quotes Václav Havel, speaking about his Czech people. The only thing they needed was hope, an orientation of the spirit. Havel was both a president and a playwright. And Bryan Stevenson continues, Havel is referring to the kind of hope that creates a willingness to position oneself in a hopeless place and be a witness, that allows one to believe in a better future even in the face of abusive power. The kind of hope that makes one strong. In his book, Stevenson provides specific examples and proof of what he identifies as this hope. Examples that show how by persistent fighting to get justice for his prisoner clients, he has succeeded. I am often told by people who are not in the arts that the arts can influence peace building in ways that textbooks, academic learning cannot. Chivi Sok, who is a friend of mine, a Cambodian American human rights activist, who was actually here on this stage, and you'll see a clip of her momentarily, says, "What is clear to me is that the world needs artists of all type if we are to solve some of the most pressing problems facing our global society. I came from a world where art and education were banned. If you dare to practice your craft, penalty could be death itself. Destruction of art is destruction of a nation's soul." Recently, the Broadway actor and singer Mandy Patinkin joined American Jewish World Service President Ruth Messinger on a trip to Cambodia. Patinkin speaks about the power of listening to stories as a means of his own human rights education and activism. I see myself as a witness in my work in theater. In terms of theatrical language, I like to design a kind of poetry which lives and breathes through action and characters on stage. The poet Wallace Stevens says, "The poem must resist the intelligence, almost successfully." The language of theater and the audience are involved in a kind of muscular fight with each other. I believe theater as an art form exists every time differently. It lives and breathes in community. Albert Camus says theater is the night when the game is played. And he means each time with a different outcome, like a sports match. And I feel that theater pieces are prisms, Prisms, which cast different lights for each audience member. Everyone imagines and interprets the plays differently, which allows a shared creative experience. How have audiences reacted to my work in terms of advancing peace and justice through the arts? They refer to the synergy between the play, present-day issues, and the work we are doing here at the school. They speak about the dramatization of the issues and of history. They remark on a piece of history seen through the eyes of complicated and diverse characters. How a play can humanize an issue of conflict and retain its significance. How it's important for students who did not live through a time of history. And they say also, so often in life, the perpetrator is not so much other as part of the culture in which we live, part of us. And a way to start a discussion, and the power of theater in remembering and honoring human rights atrocities. Now I would like to show you a clip from the Acting Together documentary.
When the Khmer Rouge took over Cambodia, a number of things happened. They essentially closed down the borders, essentially enslaved the entire population, and we experienced destruction at every level of society. We also saw destruction of something that I believe to be the most important element of the country's soul, which is art and education.
They blindfolded me for a long time. Suddenly they took off the blindfold and took my photo. Who are you?
A photograph on the wall, like you.
Bati,
Yes?
you saw right. There was something at the bottom of my photo. A child's hand. They took off the blindfold, and my daughter, she reached up to me. I did not move. They shot her first. I did not protect her. She reached up to me. I was born in the labor camp in 1976. It just, brings a chill to me to do this play and to realize that, things like this happens not only in my family, but in other families too.
The reason I survived, I was stealing food from my neighbor, and I saved my portion for my dad because I realized my dad and I am the only one that left to survive. So that's only a little bit my story. I'll pass on to.
Okay, in 1975, when the Khmer Rouge came into power,
I would like to talk about the idea of remembering as a revolutionary act. Memory, in the case of people who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, is very tricky because on one level, intrusive memories enter into your mind and they replay themselves. So there's the hope of not wanting to re-traumatize people that have survived genocide. But there's also the very, very deep hope of never again. And so there is the hope of needing to remember things that have happened. An example I would give is that in the schools in Cambodia now, the Pol Pot time, which is the Khmer Rouge regime, which lasted from 1975 to 79, is no longer taught in the schools. So we get this sense of how memory is a dual entity that is very tricky to deal with. In the late 1980s, I started writing about Cambodian refugees who had arrived in the United States. And there were 150 Cambodian refugee women who suffered from psychosomatic blindness. This first passage is from the character of Tita San, who is the lead in the play. And she's a 50-year-old Cambodian refugee woman who's come to the United States to live with her brother. They tied Own to a tree, a magnolia. They're forcing her to marry. The official, he unties her. He points to the young soldier. Will you marry him? She shakes her head no. She is stubborn. Will not accept. The official takes out his blade. They cut off her head. He throws it into a fire where a pile of corpses and body parts burn. Smoke got in my eye. Don't cry, or they'll kill you. One of Tita's discoveries is to come to understand that her daughter was indeed extremely brave in what she did. Along the journey of all the research I did are all the revolutionary acts that people did do, and they included saying no at every turn.
You actually performed a lot of interviews with Cambodian women in the United States, and I was wondering how they reacted to your finished product.
There's a lot of silence, and what I found interesting about theater is that it stood outside of politics. Every time that we would do these plays, afterwards people would just sit in their seats and no one would leave. And so we started having discussions afterwards. And one of the things that it seemed that the play provided was a safe environment, and that they could sit and meditate upon whatever it was in the play that they wanted to, and then use that as a way for having a discussion. And that was a way for also people to cry. The possibility of simply talking and remembering and telling stories was very healing. I think the key is that we are all so implicated in these issues because a lot of times Americans don't know a lot of things about these countries. But the thing that we do know is that we carpet bombed Cambodia, and that created an imbalance.
រយៈពេល12ឆ្នាំដែលអាមេរិកកាំងបានទម្លាក់គ្រាប់បែកគ្រាប់ដូចទឹកភ្លៀងធ្លាក់ពីលើអាកាសថ្ងៃមួយនាខែមេសា
My feeling of hope comes from the ability to learn to acknowledge. When I asked a Cambodian friend about this, I said, would it help if you got reparations? He just looks at me and says, the strong never apologize. And I think, in a way, that's where I'd like to leave this discussion. How do we negotiate that issue? Because I think that really actually is staring us sort of right in the face.
To give me a specific example to share with you of how their theater work has been in the service of peace. Native American playwright William S. Yellow Robe Jr. from the Assiniboine tribe offers you the final monologue from his play The Star Quilter, spoken by the character Mona Gray, an Assiniboine woman. Mona says, "You never asked me why I made star quilts. You were more concerned about how you could get your hands on one. But with all this, you still never understood or asked why I made star quilts. You might not even want to hear now. When I was young, I used to do a lot of beadwork a long time ago. Then I got my medicine and received something special to work into my quilts. This job of yours led me off my path, the right path. Star quilts are beautiful because they have one color, and all the different shades of that color lead them to the center, the heart. That's why I made these quilts. They came from my heart. I wanted to share this gift with people because it really made different ones happy. How can you sell something that comes from your heart? You come here today wanting another star quilt. You just, like a lot of people, imagine we don't understand you. Look at those Indians. They're different. They dress like us, but they aren't like us, is what I've heard. That's true, we are different from you. That's why I always tried to help you. I didn't want to let our differences become a barrier. I really wanted to know who and what you are. And that's because we both live here in this world. Deer, badgers, even a grasshopper will live near one another, though they are not the same. But each is valuable and necessary in completing the circle. I've never found out who else you might be, Luann, besides what little of that one side of you I saw. And now that I'm older, I realize I don't know you, and you don't know me. Not one thing about me. It makes me feel bad to say this to you. I don't have any more star quilts for you. I gave you the last one a long time ago, and you didn't even know it. We've grown old and pitiful, but pitiful not because we are old, pitiful that we've been here for so long and still don't know anything about one another. And that makes me feel sad. She gets up and wraps her shawl around Luann. Warm yourself, Luann. At least it could be a start. And so we see the action of Mona offering her own shawl, which is a ritual of peace that is repeated each time the play is performed. My friend, African-American playwright Kia Corthron, shares with you a project she participated in called Women of Letters at the Public Theater in New York City. The assignment was a letter to my burning desire. Here is a segment from Kia's letter. Dear burning desire, okay, I will go for broke and rename you Peace. The end goal of all justice, right? Black Lives Matter did not materialize as a data collection center to simply document tragic encounters between Black citizens and law enforcement. It emerged as an action toward ending those encounters. I'm an optimist. Our relationship with Cuba is starting to approach the level of sanity. The Occupy movement finally brought the 99% into wide consciousness, and Flight for 15 has already raised the minimum wage in several cities. An increasing number of college campuses have divested from fossil fuels, and college presidents are starting to get it right with race or get out. For those of us who are relatively free, I believe it's our duty to stay optimistic, hopeful, energized, to build a better society, because the alternative is to just throw up our hands in despair. As discouraged as we Black folks feel, the citizen videographers among us would not bother keep recording incidents of police brutality unless we had some hope those videos might start to shift the paradigm. As Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. To answer the call of this assignment, I could have chosen to search other areas of my soul, gone an entirely different direction. I have a burning desire to return to my 15-year-old self and correct the shameful mistake I made in not being with my grandmother as she was dying. I have a burning desire to have my mother alive again and laughing with me. But to have publicly explored those agonizing depths would have required considerably more courage than I have. I can't bring my mother or my grandmother back. Such a prospect would be fantasy. I'm a realist. So instead, I decided to write to you, world peace, as you are utterly attainable. Heather Raffo is an Iraqi-American playwright and performer of 9 Parts of Desire, and she is an alumna of this university. She received her Master's of Fine Arts in Acting Performance here. Her opera Filloux just received its premiere in at Long Beach Opera. She says to you, my work addresses open wounds. It speaks the unspeakable. It creates a shelter first, then creates a conversation. I think conversation is our roadmap to peace. So for example, I was just at the opening of Filloux, the opera I wrote about a real-life Marine who is suffering from severe PTSD. When a young Iraqi friend of mine came to see the show, she went out for dinner with us afterwards. The Marine and she talked for 4 hours. He asked her what she thought of the military when it first came to Iraq, all her impressions, inner thoughts, then and now. In short, he was asking for forgiveness. Since his 5 suicide attempts after the war, he had not met an Iraqi civilian. It was their open-hearted conversation, both of them sharing that they both had PTSD, that allowed them each to speak and cross personal divides. I know he left feeling a different kind of peace inside himself. And lastly, Kira Obolensky writes plays for 10,000 Things in Minneapolis, plays which are performed in prisons. She says when you're performing for an audience of incarcerated men, for example, and you feel this radiance transfer, when you see faces etched into masks of hardness and emotional shutdown begin to transform as the story unfolds, when those faces open and blossom, and we have a collective exchange of radiance, there is something profound that happens in the moment. Peace is empathy. Empathy is imagination. I think that a challenge for the School of Peace Studies and the university is to embed art, in my case I'm speaking about theater, into the curriculum so that art is not extra and not an outside event, but integral to the learning and to the degree. Alumna from the School of Peace Studies, Jasmine Afshar, received her MFA in 2015, and she's an Afghani American who traveled to Lesbos, Greece to assist refugees fleeing from the Middle East. Much of her research here focused on the ISIS conflict, as well as rebuilding the broken state of Afghanistan. Translating for the refugees into Farsi, the research became real. She says the ramifications and the people suffering from war, poverty, and the international community's failure to act were sitting in front of me and telling their stories over a cup of tea. Examples or proof of hope are what can build strength as a school and a university. Jasmine gives a concise example of peace building. Can the university integrate art, peace building, and social justice into its core structure? As part of the curriculum, could USD spotlight peace builders such as Jasmine in their various departments? As examples, a student filmmaker makes a short about her work. A journalism student writes an article about her work. In the visual arts, can Jasmine ask some of the children refugees to make drawings and ask them to explain them to her. She could send a few to a student artist curator who could feature them in a gallery here. Jasmine could also interview a few refugees, take their testimony, and the theater department could present a few monologues, which would be in the genre of documentary theater. These collaborations need to be embedded into the curriculums. This way, the whole school is making social justice and peace building their mandate. It is helping the school with its mission statement and the campaign for USD leading change. How can we learn from the School of Peace Studies alumni in terms of what is needed both at home and in the field? In my work in Cambodia, I grew frustrated by the NGO world that seemed to live in its own economy, while the artists I knew remained just as poor. And Margaret Mead talks about a small group of citizens changing the world, and adding to that, how can we consolidate our efforts so we are not repeating the work, but instead building momentum and change. I traveled to Juba, South Sudan in December of 2013 for my playwriting work, a week before the onset of the South Sudanese Civil War. Haley Umayam, who's a 2013 alumna from the School of Peace Studies, has worked for Force Here Consulting in Juba, South Sudan. In this role, she directs and analyzes research that focuses on information sharing with vulnerable populations. I know firsthand that the university needs to know Haley Umayam and learn from her because she is a brave peace builder. I'd now like to show you a clip about my play Dog and Wolf and a community project that I did.
Majka smaju, pođulom rodila, čul se truni.
I'm Katrine Filloux, and I'm a playwright. I'm also the conceiver of this project called Dog and Wolf Meets the Community.
Yasmina lights up a cigarette.
There's no smoking in here.
I will need the cigarette.
Sorry. It says here your name is Fatima.
No.
What is your legal name?
Fatima.
It was very intriguing to me to think about the idea of writing a play that had a small cast that could be brought to various communities.
Hi, I'm Stephen Half. I run Still Waters in a Storm, and we hosted the reading today, the reading of Dog and Wolf. And we were talking before about this draft of the play and about what the actors brought to it. And I would summarize that as saying that it's now not a play about trauma, it's a play about recovery. It's become a play about grace instead of a play about despair.
Any other reactions, feelings, questions about the play, about the process?
Say, okay, so were you or weren't you persecuted? Were you threatened?
Yeah.
You know, when everything is so blurry in a war zone,
Yeah.
and trying to like justify savage instincts with rules of law, rules of war.
When you take a story to communities that have been chosen ahead of time because we think maybe they would need this story, would be interested in this story, like the Literacy Center, which we did Still Waters in a Storm in Bushwick, which is about taking your experience and being able to tell a story. Or going to St. Rita's Refugee Center in the Bronx, where there are immigrants, waves of immigrants have come through, and therefore they might be interested in the story of an immigrant. Or today we did here at CultureHub a live broadcast to Sarajevo, where we are so humbled because we are telling this story about a Bosnian refugee to people who actually experienced it.
Did you know that a baby has 300 bones that fuse together as he grows? Is the baby still growing underground? Is the baby still looking for night. 206 rocks, 206 bones. 300 rocks, 300 bones. Ha! Lana!
And because of the story is dealing with very human aspects and pains and anxieties that I think everybody throughout society has, it ends up carrying a lot of universal themes. So the story, in a lot of ways, if people can find a venue, a way into it to relate to the characters and the kind of obstacles and the plight that they are having with participating in life, staying engaged in life, finding a way to resolve the day-to-day pains and the suffering or the anguish or whatever they may be dealing with. I, just as a human being, as an actor, find that telling that kind of story that can be accessible and maybe improve the quality of life in some way for other people out there by turning on light bulbs in their head to make them understand that they're not alone.
One thing that came up in the play, which I thought was brilliant, was it was in the dialogue, just woven into the dialogue, where John's character says, "Well, the judge will say, isn't that genocide over? Isn't the genocide over?" And I think the one thing that Katrina and I learned when we were in Bosnia in 2007, especially at the secondary mass grave we visited, was the translator that there said, in a way, the genocide is ongoing. And that's what I thought, that the play makes this point, that there's ways in which genocide is continuing, and it's a message that people need to hear, I think, around the world.
Thank you. So my newest play is called What Does Free Mean? And it's about women in mass incarceration in the United States. I'm currently co-teaching a class at John Jay College of Criminal Justice with Amy Green about women in mass incarceration and playwriting. The class is a good example of an art and peace-building model. It takes an artistic approach to learning about and empathizing with the victims and survivors of what Brian Stevenson calls abusive power. It explores communities' alternatives to oppression and violence. I would be interested in turning the class into a prototype that could be taught nationwide, since, as you know, mass incarceration is the new Jim Crow, as Michelle Alexander's book so clearly demonstrates. And overall, the top 44 jurisdictions throughout the world with the highest rate of incarcerating women are individual American states. I'm going to read the prologue of my new play and a scene later in the play when my main character, Mary, is in solitary confinement. Prologue. Mary is shackled at her wrists. Mary, I tried to run away. Higginson, an abolitionist soldier, looks at the Emancipation Proclamation. Higginson, I never saw anything so electric. Mary, hid in the forest. Higginson, it made all other words cheap. Mary, in the big pine trees. Higginson, art could not have dreamed a tribute to the day of Jubilee. Mary, running at night north. Higginson, history will not believe it. Mary, but my legs gave up. Higginson, just think of it. Mary, and they caught me. Higginson, the first day slaves ever had a country. Mary shackled me. Higginson, the first flag she had ever seen which promised anything to her people. Mary, the scars are on my wrists, on my back, where I can't see them. Mary looks at the proclamation. She comes out of the shackles. Mary, a free moment in the sun, emancipation. Higginson exits. The stage has pennies on it. Mary. He is on pennies all over the streets of our country. No one bothers to pick him up. The prologue ends, and a scene later in the play, a CO, or corrections officer, enters and gives Mary some paper and a dull pen. The CO, what did you say? Mary, nothing. CO, you saw a mouse? Mary, a monk. CO, what? Mary had just had a visitation in her solitary cell from her version of Thomas Merton. Mary draws. The CO says, they say you're good. Mary, who? The CO, there's plenty of paper, just let me know. Mary stares at him. They look at the pile of crumpled paper in her cell. Mary, can you take that? The CO, sure. He takes the pile of crumpled paper. CO, let me know about the mouse. Mary, thanks. The CO exits and she draws. The actress Connie Winston, who's playing the role of Mary, writes, I would suggest that you read the prologue, because for me it helps to set the historical context of one of the themes of the play, which is mass incarceration and its intrinsic connection to slavery. I think you could then bookend with the scene between Mary and the CO, which is the only time we see Mary at peace with her oppressors. One could argue that the CO is a kind of abolitionist, not in the strictest sense of the word, but abolitionists were those who allowed their consciences to direct their actions. And that is certainly exemplified in that scene showing the oppressor attempting to make peace with the oppressed. As Kia Corcoran speaks of searching other areas of her soul and of courage, this new play has asked me to search my soul and asked me for courage in terms of understanding peace for myself. We need to acknowledge the Native American genocide in this country and slavery and their legacies as the basis of the beginning of our peace building. We share this land with Mexico, and we need to be diligent in the idea of do no harm as we try to build peace and justice using our various talents and abilities. Thank you. So we're now going to open it up to a Q&A and hopefully, yay! Hi. Hi.
I was hoping that you might speak a little bit about your approach to casting. Casting's so important, and I think in this particular kind of work, it makes different meaning than it would for a commercial theater purpose. Do you cast out of the communities that you work with? How do you approach it?
Oh, that's a great question and a complicated one. So there's the two extremes. There's Eyes of the Heart, a professional production of it in New York City, and the producer, who was also playing the lead actress, Mia Katikbak, says, let the best actor win. We can't cast with anybody else but the best actor. So that means any kind of Asian actor that is able to do the part. Versus the clip that you saw of the photographs from S21, which was So P10 and Chat Pearsett, who are both people that were they survived the Khmer Rouge genocide, and they also were in the Thai camps afterwards. So there are two ways of looking at that. Right now in John Jay, we're doing my play that I'm just writing, and the first idea was that the students would read all the chorus parts. So we'd have a professional actress, Connie, playing Mary, and then the students would play everything else. However, the students are freshmen, they're 18, they're shy, and they have no volume. And they don't want to be in the play. So it really is, it's sort of a continuum. I don't know if that answers the question. And I could tell you a lot more about that as well. Thank you.
Hi, I have a question about how you start the process of writing a play. Issues of memory, representation, and identity are so closely intertwined. What is your research process, and what is that step between going through research to actually putting words on paper and speaking in this state of resurrecting memory as an American author, basically?
In terms of what I choose to write about, Kia was talking about that burning desire assignment. Well, it really comes down to what is the burning desire? What is the subject that I think I have to write about? Right now, it's mass incarceration, because I actually attended a production of The Wizard of Oz performed by the prisoners in Sing Sing prison. And I had never been in a prison before, and it was something that was life-changing for me. Not only going in, but walking out of the prison, honestly, was one of the most heartbreaking things to think about, the fact that I could walk out. So it really is the topic that I can't let go of. In terms of the research, I try to read, obviously, as much as I can, everything I can, talk to as many people as I can, listen to people. It really depends also if it's historically placed in something where I can find people, or if it's in the past where there wouldn't be anybody, and I've had all sorts of scenarios of how that works. And then there's that day where you are literally, it's like you're a plane loaded down with stuff and you have to land. And then ultimately you have to throw a lot of it out. And then it really comes into the idea of listening to the play over and over again and doing rewrites. So that's pretty much the process.
Hello? Oh, sorry. Hello? Yeah, I have a question. So this is definitely what I was interested in pursuing as a career, is using theater for education and for self-improvement of people's situations, and hopefully they can express themselves in their communities and hopefully advance it through that. And I wanted to know, is there a sense of, do you have a career advice, like a path I can start off at and then build to my personal choices? But I just wanted career advice, because I've done a workshop with you before, and so also, do you come here often? I just wanted to. Oh, sorry, that sounded really weird. But yeah, thank you. That's fine.
Where are you? Are you studying right now, or?
Oh, I'm not in university right now.
Okay. So would the work that you want to do, you want to always have it be related to social justice?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I do think that this idea of arts and peace building, which is now, I don't know if you would say taking off, but Brandeis has a program in arts and peace building, which is an undergraduate minor. And I do believe that this school is in the process of trying to create an arts and peace building minor here. So I think that's an interesting way to go. And I do know also that the theater undergraduate department is geared towards social justice here. So perhaps trying to seek out programs that mix theater and social justice together would be, there are also some theaters that have particular kind of internships or programs that are specifically geared for that.
I was
in particular, it is more like a conversation, less of like a big event like this.
well, I teach at the School of Architecture, the new School of Architecture here in San Diego, and I've been trying to bring in notions of social justice to my students, but I'm kind of pioneering the path. I actually studied Peacebuilding at the University of Notre Dame, the Kroc Institute there, and so I was very inspired by that, but I've been sort of like bumbling my way along for the last 20 years, trying to merge architecture and peace in some way. And so I just was inspired by that notion of combining the arts and peace together. And you spoke of it, bringing it to this school, which is dedicated to peace, but I'm kind of embedded in a school of architecture, and I kind of want to find ways to bring peace more in that venue.
Baja California.
I just came back from where I worked with students building a healing center in the center of Baja, basically using rocks and donkey poop and whatever we could find around to work to support this local doctor who was wanting to use his skills to heal people. And so it just came together to bring a bunch of students down there for a spring break project. But I want to take it further and really embed this notion into the School of Architecture because it's what we need to do right now, or else we're just not going to be here.
Because they have an association with Mexico. So I think the other thing that I'm a big believer in, it's a little bit of an obsession, is not reinventing the wheel. And I know there are people out there that are doing what you want, what you're interested in doing. So it's a matter of asking. What I often do is just ask and ask and ask until I find the way to that person. And then the idea of trying to find a clear and practical way to work with those people so that it's not theoretical, but that it actually has, again, embedded somehow in either the curriculum of that school, or at least finding a way that you're having a direct conversation rather than a completely vague one. And I'll think about that more because I think I have more ideas for you. And since I know how to get in touch with you, I will do so. Yeah. Thanks, Joe. Hi.
Oh, good Lord. How you get your message out to people that don't know or understand the concepts that you're trying to portray?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't write plays to impart a message, and my plays are always stories, and they tell the story of oftentimes things that end up being different than what I anticipated. So all that I can hope is that, just like Kira Obolensky was saying when the prisoners come to listen, that something in the story would engage them to take the journey, and then the message is up to them to take or not take. Because I don't, again, think that anytime people see plays, they take different messages, at least from mine, I think. However, I do think that theater in the United States right now may not be the best way to reach your average American, because your average American does not go to the theater. So when in this John Jay class that we're teaching, we've got 10 freshmen from the inner cities who know nothing about theater, for one thing. But also, they told us the first day of class, they didn't know mass incarceration was a big problem. They also didn't know that women were imprisoned very much. So I feel that I need to find in my work better ways of better multipliers, that's why I was talking about the prototype of a class that would be done in many places, because if only this tiny little group of people in the US are going to the theater, then it's not working. And then there's a problem that we have in the theater, and that is that if an actor is a professional and is in Actors' Equity, you can't film them. So if you wanted to use that as a multiplier, that becomes very difficult. Whereas in Europe, everything is filmed. So it's a really good question. Yes?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Hi. My name is Widad. I'm from Iraq. Thank you very much for this opportunity to listen to you. I was thinking, why can't we include this subject as a general education requirement at schools?
This subject?
And what you are talking about, theater and art as a method for peace and justice. About 3 weeks ago, I came across a photographer from Portland, Oregon, who had contacted me to connect him to Iraqis and Syrian refugees. And his project was called What We Carried With Us.
Yeah, I've heard of that project. Yeah.
Remnants of Cradle of Civilization.
Yeah.
And it was really quite moving, touching, going to Syrian displaced refugees and Iraqis and showing their cherished pieces that they carried with them. Jim Lomason is the conceiver of this project, and he would take pictures of those cherished items, maybe a Bible or a head dress, a praying rug, a picture, dirt from their country, a knife, very simple things, Barbie doll, a tape, but it was really for me transforming, and for him saying that by taking pictures of those cherished items, then returning them to us after he printed it, and then to ask us to explain what it meant to us, or do anything that we feel, draw on it, do calligraphy, mess it up, and then give it back to him. He frames it and shows it in a touring exhibits. And he said this way he saw that the Americans empathize more with what we Americans have done to Iraq and Syria by our failed policies. By doing that, he did not want us to be ambivalent and jaded about the damage we have done to Iraq and to Syria by our lack of strategy.
Yeah.
May I read just 2 lines about Khalil Gibran on crime and punishment?
Mm-hmm.
Just indulge me. Khalil Gibran Khalil on crime and punishment, he said, and as a single that turns not yellow, and as a single leaf turns not yellow but with the silent knowledge of the whole, so the wrongdoer cannot do wrong without the hidden will of you all. When I say that, I think, of course, of what ISIS has done to Iraq and to Syria and to so many places, and to Europeans in Belgium, in France, in United States. But this message, when I say it, I am accusing many of my people back home for allowing also evils like ISIS and like them to continue with them being silent. Thank you.
Thank you. One thing I'll say about putting this, did you mean like high schools or what level? All levels.
Movie making. I'm an electrical engineer, by the way, but I'm involved with the Iraqi community and as an activist with civil society and non-government organization. So this colleague and I, we thought of doing an expatriate film club to encourage young people, older people, to tell their story through filmmaking. Like you said, empathy, imagination, building peace. People of all kinds, all levels.
Yeah, and I think having a club is a great idea. And then in terms of this being in schools, that much of that has to do with policy. And we have a problem or we have a challenge in the United States in terms of arts in the schools. And so I would imagine that putting this into the curriculum would be complex, but the way to do it, I think, is to do it at the policy level, at a high level of policy in which we need to keep on reminding people in this country how important the arts actually are and what the outcomes of that are.
Somebody was talking about audience development.
Yes.
And how do you do this? Jean Eisen, with her dance theater.
Yeah.
She has a lot of different foci, but regardless, I was at her presentation the other day, and she took a number of, they're doing a dance festival, irrelevant in a way, but not, because she knows the combination of bringing the arts to the community. We were down at 54th at the Jacobs Place, outdoors, and free. It's not rocket science. It is microcosm. Admittedly, you're not getting it into the world, but you're getting it into the community, and it was the most diverse community I have seen, and she does that with her trolley dances. And all of them are focused on some subculture of the US, but others who have tried, I look and I see the audiences, and they're pretty much like this. And that was amazingly diverse.
Right.
And we can't be talking to ourselves about peace and justice.
Yeah, no, with the Dog and Wolf, we took it to communities, and that was very gratifying and difficult. With Selma 65, it's a one-woman show, and so we got it down to a suitcase And we went to a variety of places. It was easier because there was just one actress. So that was something that we learned.
Go ahead. Okay. May I ask a question now, please?
Sure.
Thank you. Theater as witness. I'm thinking, and then you say advancing peace through and justice through the arts. It would seem to me, and I know this is probably on your mind, to expand it to all the arts. I mean, you want the building, theater is one building block, but painting and ceramics and storytelling, there's just so much dance.
Absolutely. I think this is just a prototype, but it could happen with music and dance and visual art.
Right, and yes, the prototype, but I think your idea also of collaborating with other groups and just having a loose umbrella organization so that, and identify it with one logo, and so people feel like they're a part of something, no matter what art they're involved in.
It's funny because originally with the project at Brandeis, I think our goal was the arts in general, but it turned out it took us so much time just to do theater, just to do a rigorous, because we ended up doing 2 anthologies of case studies that had to do with theater, and it was an academic kind of rigor that had to happen, and and then the documentary film. So I think at first we were planning to do that, and I think that Cindy now at Brandeis is moving into the other arts. Well, it was housed as at an institution that was academic. So
thank you. Your excellent talk tonight was very good, but it was academic, and I think it would, if you had had a couple more actors on stage with you and all, I think you would have gotten your message through. Well, you have some fabulous points that you're making. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have a few points I want to ask you about. Did you say that in Cambodia they are not teaching about what happened in the history of the Khmer Rouge?
Well, that was a while ago when I said that. There's a documentation center in Phnom Penh, which was funded by the State Department, actually. It used to be at Yale. It was called the Cambodian Genocide Project. And then it went to Phnom Penh. And Yuk Chang, who runs that, has done a huge amount of work in getting it out into the schools. However, Cambodia is a very corrupt country, and the school system is vulnerable. So I would think that kind of teaching would depend on all sorts of variables.
I know that my brother, even though during the Vietnam War, even this country did not acknowledge that we went into Cambodia, and that's where he was.
It was a secret when people, was he a pilot or?
No, he was in the military, the army, and so he on the front line, and you know, they had many tunnels. Are you aware of all the tunnels that they had there? And just recently, this past year, he told me that he was down in those tunnels and just how they were built and how easily you could lose your life in these tunnels because of the traps. And he has a dear friend in Siberia, and I didn't realize this, that many people from Russia go to Vietnam for like an R&R, you know, a vacation. And so it was a year ago that I know the night before he was leaving, he called me and said he was afraid to go back there. And I said, no, it's very different now. And he went and he had a wonderful time, and he flew her and her son over there. They had a wonderful time. It's just, they have moved on, whereas we haven't. You know, we're still in the mindset of war. That's one of the things I wanted to address, is that I've lived here almost 4 years, but it was probably 5 or 6 years ago when I was visiting San Diego before I moved here, that I went to some kind of rally downtown San Diego, and it was for the Department of Peace. And I have on my car this bumper sticker. The United States government used to have a Department of Peace. And in the last, or maybe it was more than 5 or 6 years ago, I don't know, but I had this bumper sticker, and there used to be a movement here in San Diego. And Dennis Kucinich is the one in Ohio that started the Department of Peace, and that has, our government has totally dropped having so there's no money at all being set aside for peace in this country anymore, which is horrible. I would like to see a play addressed towards landmines, because there's only 6 countries in the world who have not signed to ban the landmines, and we are the only industrialized country that has not signed that treaty, because it's $1 billion business here.
Well, also the United States does not have a history of signing treaties. We are not part of the International Criminal Court at The Hague. And the Kyoto Protocol, obviously, we did not sign. So
I have one last thing I want to mention before I pass the baton, is I do know Richard Morse. Richard Morse traveled with Patch Adams and the Gesundheit Institute around the world many times. You've heard of the Gesundheit Institute out of Virginia? Well, you should look into that. They bring humor through theater and art around the world. But I'd like to share with you his book and his DVD about theater and education. He lives in the center in Southern Illinois. I know him personally, and is taught theater through education and mime and all that in the schools, and they've been in many parts of South America. They also went to Chicago and LA. But it is a wonderful way to get these young kids involved, because I only took a couple of classes in Acting 1 and Acting 2, but it teaches you to get out of your own self. You have to in order to. So it's got to be something that is very needed in this society, because this internet stuff on these phones is all about withdrawing, and we need to get out of that, right?
absolutely, I agree with that, yes.
Hello. In this day and age with the arts, there's often, along with this new, not new, but this focus on peace and justice, there's often also a connection to identification. As a white woman telling the stories of different ethnicities and different backgrounds, what kind of experiences have you had in dealing with any pushback or any comments about you telling those kind of stories?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I'll say is that I always write my stories with the entry point of an American, and that many of these stories have to do with the complicity that the United States has for these problems. So I think that that's one thing that I would say. I've just done the work. I've with Cambodia, it started because I had heard about the story of the psychosomatic blindness, and I went to a refugee center in the Bronx where I spent many, many years working and doing an oral history project and listening. And I tell stories, I create characters. I think it's tricky, but on the other hand, the imagination and storytelling is something that we are, I believe, all allowed to do and try. And in terms of the pushback, I haven't had it generally because I've always been very associated with people from the culture working with me.
Hi, I was wondering, have you had any or much collaboration or inspiration from, so kind of maybe kind of a similar question to his, collaboration and or inspiration from artists in the communities whose stories you're telling? So for example, were you able to connect with artists in Sarajevo, or also thinking about mass incarceration and just how there are many artists telling that story in our country via lots of music, and just wondering how inspired or you are by artists from the communities, and if you've been able to collaborate with them?
Yes. So when the opera Where Elephants Weep that you saw, it was a major collaboration in which the Cambodian man who was singing, the older man, his name is Yang Si Tol, and he is one of the most famous performers in Cambodia, also a survivor of the genocide, which everybody pretty much would be if they're still alive. And so the only thing I did for that opera is I wrote the words. And then I had a composer, Him Sopi, and all the actors, the Cambodian actors. So and then with photographs from S21, which was done in Cambodia, there was this wonderful filmmaker who's French-Cambodian, Riti Pan, who I had met, who found me the actors that were in the play. And it was, I consider my part of it small in the sense that when Photographs from S21 was done in the US, it was a short play. It ran about 10, 15 minutes. When it was done in Phnom Penh, I think it was a half an hour or something. And they were doing all sorts of things, and at first I was like, wow, what's happening? But then I was just so, it was like letting a bird fly away. And I was fascinated by what they were doing. It was things that I never would have imagined. So, and that happens a lot in theater. So I think that's the thing about theater. It's a completely collaborative art form. So yes, I've been blessed to have met many artists. And then with Lemkin's House, oddly enough, that was done before it was done in the US. It was translated into Bosnian and done in Sarajevo. And I learned a lot from that. I mean, the actors were smoking cigarettes. They smoke all the time. They smoke during rehearsal, even if they're not, the characters don't smoke. I mean, it was just, that was a sort of ridiculous example, but I mean, everything, I've seen so many different things that it's really been very much of a learning experience. Yes. Yes.
I just want to take a chance because I know that we promised to the number of students that we would get them out on time.
Oh, yes.
I apologize for that. But I'm sure if you want to talk a bit more, we can spend a few minutes in front of the stage down
Oh,
here.
sure, yeah, and I'll be here for the next, for the week.
Right.
So please
She's
look.
truly an artist in residence. So we
Please
have
look
this-
for me, and I honestly would love to, if there's anything I can do to help you, or if you want to use me as a resource, that's why I'm here. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.